Inflation Reduction Act. This information session is designed to update you on our progress and address your questions. We plan on addressing as many questions as possible during the question and answer period. Updated information about Reclamation's implementation of bipartisan infrastructure law is always available at www.usbr.gov/BIL or Inflation Reduction Act at www.usbr.gov/inflation-reduction-act. You may find the links in the chat, or they are linked from Reclamation's homepage. Also, feel free to submit your questions, comments about bipartisan infrastructure law to usbr.bil@usbr.gov or for Inflation Reduction Act to usbr.ir.act@usbr.gov. And we will work to address your questions. We also have a growing list of Q&As available, and we hope that is a helpful resource to you. We are committed to transparency through this process and appreciate your support of the historic opportunity to improve our nation's infrastructure. It is now my pleasure to introduce our Senior Advisor for Operations, Matt Masieri.
Thank you, Mary, and thank you to all of our public affairs team. And good morning, all of you on the call today from our tribal partner community. I'm Matt Masieri, Senior Advisor for Operations, and I co-lead the implementation of the bipartisan infrastructure law together with Beth Hughes Brown, who's on our call with us today. We also have our Inflation Reduction Act team on the call today. And this is, as Mary alluded to, a continuation of our series of quarterly updates on the BIL and IRA implementation. Reclamation has teams for both the IRA and the BIL, but it's a whole agency approach to implementing these historic bills. So you'll see a lot of those teams on this call today as we work through the slide deck and then take your questions at the end of today's presentation. Just to save time, we will introduce each other as we go. But I want to make one quick special introduction before we get into the slides, and that is of our program manager for our Native American Affairs program, Jeff Morris, who's on our call with us today. Jeff leads our Native American International Affairs office, and he is part of our sort of community of practice with our Native American Affairs advisors in all 5 of our regions that work with our tribal partners across Reclamation. Jeff will be on the call also to help answer any tribal specific questions that we need some subject matter expert help on. Thanks for joining, Jeff. With that, why don't we move to the next slide? So today's presentation will follow mostly the same format as the dozen or so previous of these quarterly updates. There will be some of the same information that we've presented, just updated with new numbers, but also there are some new slides. Particularly, we're going to have some displays on how much is left in the implementation of the bipartisan infrastructure law and IRA. We thought, since we're approaching sort of the midpoint of implementation on these acts, it'd be good to provide that context of where we're at in the life cycle. We'll also have some new features that our Inflation Reduction Act team will highlight that they're rolling out that display where the investments are going. And so to that end, we're going to lead off the slides today talking about the IRA. And then, as we've done before, though, we will toggle back and forth between BIL and IRA sometimes because we have chronologically some overlapping milestones on the 2 acts and overlapping openings and closings of funding opportunities. So to that end, I'm going to hand off to, on our Inflation Reduction Act team, Kevin Sabo, who works in our budget office, to walk us through the next few slides on IRA. Take it away, Kevin.
Great, thanks, Matt, and good morning, everyone. Next slide, please. We've had a lot of activity in our domestic water supply program since we last met, and I'm excited to discuss that with you. As you probably know, the Inflation Reduction Act provided Reclamation with $550 million to aid disadvantaged communities with the planning, design, or construction of water projects that will provide domestic water supply to the residents. We are implementing that through 4 separate programs, which I will outline for you today. Next slide, please. Last year's round of WaterSmart announcements included funding opportunities for planning and project design and drought resiliency. From that, we announced last month almost $150 million in projects supporting 76 projects in 14 states. $82 million of that, about 150, was funded through the IRA. A second planning and design Water Smart funding opportunity closed last month. We're reviewing those applications now. But that's some of the first domestic water supply money that is going out the door, and we're excited to get that to you. Second, we released a first of its kind funding opportunity to provide $11 million to 4 American territories that do not have reliable access to potable water. Those announcements are open until late summer, with project awards to be announced at the end of the year. Very excited about that. Next slide, please. Speaking of first of its kind programs, in April, the Department of the Interior announced that we are working closely with the Indian Health Service of the Department of Health and Human Services to jointly develop safe drinking water and community sanitation infrastructure projects across Indian country. Projects funded through this whole of government effort will be announced later this year. And again, this is one of the first times, of course, that we've done domestic water projects at all, but working with HHS to do so. Excited to get that. Finally, the great bulk of domestic water supply funds will be distributed through a tribal domestic water supply program announced last April. This program will provide up to 100% of the cost of planning, design, and construction of domestic water infrastructure to tribes in the 17 Western Reclamation states. We have set aside $320 million for this program. Because we want to help our tribal partners gain access to this funding opportunity, Reclamation is hosting an instructional webinar next week on June 13th at 9 a.m. Mountain Time. You can find out more information on this webinar on our Native American Affairs webpage. That address is on the screen, and I'll post it as a link. I'll post a link to that chat page on the chat of this video conference. If you're interested in the program, I strongly encourage you to have a representative in attendance at that webinar on June 13th. With that, I'll ask for the next slide and introduce Sean Torpy, the Chief of Staff to our Commissioner, who will walk you through the IRA Canal Improvement Project and other slides. Good morning, Sean.
Good morning, Kevin. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Correct. I'll walk through our Canal Improvement Project, Section 50232. I think on our last quarterly update, we had awarded one project to date. We had $25 million under Section 50232 for solar over canals. This is a new area for Reclamation. It's been talked about quite a bit through a lot of different entities. Reclamation had not been involved until we were able to, the Inflation Reduction Act was implemented and we got the $25 million funding opportunity. So let's go to the next slide. So the Gila River Indian community has a canal improvement project at the Casablanca Canal. It was awarded in December of 2022 for $5.65 million. This was obviously announced at our last quarterly update, so this isn't new. The next slide, please. But since our March quarterly update, we've announced 3 more solar over canal projects under Section 50232 that rounded out and exhausted the $25 million. The first one was the San Luis and Delta Mendota Water Authority. It's a Delta Mendota Canal floating solar project. So this is essentially floating solar voltaic on a canal. We awarded that for $15 million. The other was the North Unit Irrigation District in our Columbia Pacific Northwest region in Oregon for $2.55 million. It also is a floating photovoltaic solar panels over the Deschutes project. And the last one was the Weber Basin Water Conservancy District solar over the Layton Canal project in Utah in our upper Colorado Basin for $1.5 million. And essentially, this will cover existing canals with solar panels crossing the Layton Canal. It'll serve as a 5-year demonstration of data collection and monitoring to evaluate the technical capabilities. So these 3 projects, including the 4th, the CRIC, rounded out the $25 million for Section 50232. So with that, can we go to the next slide, please? I'll touch briefly on drought mitigation and reclamation states, Section 50233. That is the $4 billion of funding that we received for Colorado River Basin, and as well as other basin funding. As you can see from our pie chart here, this is kind of the breakout of our current spend plan. Obviously, the majority of the money is for Colorado River, and then the other basins and the Salton Sea have a small percentage. It roughly, that $4 billion gets broken out, about $500 million for other basins. This funding will remain available through September 30th, 2026. And we will talk a little bit more about this in the next few slides. With that, I'll turn it over to Fernando Castro Alvarez to discuss the Colorado River Basin funding.
Hey, Sean.
Good morning, Fernando.
Morning, and morning to everyone. My name is Fernando Castro Alvarez, and I'm the Water Resources Portfolio Manager for the Operations Group in Washington, D.C. Can someone move to the next slide, please? So lots of exciting things happening in the Colorado River all the time, as we know, including our investments for Bucket 1, that is the short-term conservation agreements. In the lower basin, we have announced 24 agreements thus far, committing over 1.58 million acre-feet of system water. That's water that will remain in Lake Mead to support the operations. Total investment is approximately $670 million. Bucket 2, those are long-term solutions that contribute water for long periods of time to the system. We made an announcement today, our commissioner made the announcement of initial selections. Those projects that have been selected will move forward to the negotiation stage, where we will find more details regarding timing, contract, and compliance. And once we are ready to award the money, we will announce those on an individual basis. After I go off camera here, I'll paste the news release for all of you to look at. Next slide, please. We have also committed significant investments to the Salton Sea. As we know, the declining levels at the Salton Sea are contributing to water and air pollution. And therefore, together with the state of California and the Coachella Valley Water District and the Imperial Irrigation District, we came up with an agreement where the federal government is contributing up to $250 million to support the efforts there at the Salton Sea. $70 million of those 250 has been awarded already for the state of California for a project that aims to create up to 7,000 acres of aquatic habitat for wildlife and to cover exposed lake bed. And we have also awarded $2 million to the Torres Martinez tribe to expand the tribe's technical capacity for project implementation. Once we get more system conservation from the state of California, we will enable additional funding up to an additional $178 million to complete the $250 million for investments for the Salton Sea. Next slide, please. And in the upper basin, we have said before, we are dedicating approximately $500 million, both for Bucket 1, Bucket 2, equivalent to the lower basin. Bucket 1 is short-term conservation agreements. We have already executed 174 agreements for an investment of approximately $45 million that will bring 104,000 acre-feet of water for conservation there in the Upper Basin. And bucket 2 for the Upper Basin is in development. We will have 2 programs, one focused on water conservation and another one focused on ecosystem restoration projects. And we expect a funding opportunity to be released sometime later this summer. Thank you. I'm done.
Good morning.
Patience. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Fernando. I'm Melissa Korber, and I am the co-lead with Sean Torpy for IRA implementation. Next slide, please. And the long-awaited other basins category of drought mitigation, we are very excited to have announced 2 opportunities in May. The first one was $60 million for the Rio Grande, and through cooperative agreements with the New Mexico Interstate Stream Commission and National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, Reclamation will work with the Elephant Butte Irrigation District and El Paso County Water Improvement District number 1, and the International Boundary and Water Commission, along with local stakeholders, to develop supplemental water projects and programs to benefit the Rio Grande project and listed species in the basin. The projects and programs currently in the planning stages include storage at existing sediment dams and new off-channel storage to capture stormwater and use it to recharge the aquifer, reduce irrigation demands, and improve and create riparian wildlife habitat, along with irrigation infrastructure efficiency and forbearance and fallowing. The other one we were excited to announce at the end of May was $81 million for the South of Delta Central Valley project that supports their drought pool initiative and the San Joaquin Restoration Program. And that drought pool is the centerpiece of a commitment with a vision to stabilize the water reliability south of Delta. This includes water reliability and stability to support refuge programs, agriculture, industry, and the communities we serve, many of which are disadvantaged. The drought plan seeks to alleviate these challenges while directly supporting the San Joaquin River Restoration Program and supporting ecosystem improvements in the Delta and state initiatives such as Healthy Rivers for California. There were 3 specific projects that were awarded funding underneath this $81 million. Details can be found in the hyperlinked press release. I will also drop that into the chat for this meeting so you can access those. But Westlands Water District Aquifer Storage and Recovery Wells, Patterson Irrigation District East-West Conveyance Project, and the Los Banos Creek Detention Dam Project. So the drought plan and those projects are going to help reduce dry year water diversions from the Delta and provide critical water supply to CVPIA south of Delta refuges and protect the San Joaquin River Restoration Program in the driest years by carrying over water from wet years. So we're very excited to be able to provide that opportunity in the Central Valley. Next slide, please. Oh, one other item on that is we will have other basin announcements coming throughout the rest of the year. You will probably see 1 or 2 a month as we work through the rest of those requirements. The other opportunity that was available was emergency drought relief for tribes. Next slide, please. This provided $12.5 million, and we released a notice of funding opportunity last December to provide assistance to tribes that are impacted. They're impacted by the operation of reclamation water projects with near-term drought relief projects. That opportunity closed in April, and we are hoping to announce selections in the fall. Next slide, please. And I'm going to turn it over to Sean Torpy, my co-lead. Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa. Yeah, I'll just close us out here with a summary of the Inflation Reduction Act. As you can see, and as you heard from Kevin, myself, Fernando, and Melissa, we had $4.6 billion in the IRA program. As you can see, we've announced 84 million in the domestic water supply, 25 million in the canal improvements, 1.2 billion in drought mitigation, and then we'll be announcing the emergency relief hopefully this fall. So looking at our pie chart, you can see that we've announced over 30% of the money, and we have about 60.5% in progress and hopefully being announced over the next year or so. So that equates to about $3.2 billion that we're still getting ready to get out the door. Next slide, please. And lastly, some exciting news for the IRA. We're adding a dashboard to our IRA webpage that we'll be working to keep up to date as closely as possible. It's a living document, a living web page. So there will be a little bit of lag on it being updated. It won't be real time, but we will do our best to keep it as accurate as possible. But as you can see, we have our 4 buckets of money, total projects, and then a nice map that lays out where all the different projects have been awarded, and essentially clicking on those little dots will give you kind of a background of what the project is and who has received that funding. It will be going live hopefully later today. There should be a link at that website at the bottom of the screen that you'll be able to click on and be able to access this. It isn't currently live yet, but I'm hoping if you go there later today or first thing tomorrow, you should be able to see the link and be able to click around and hopefully provide some good useful tools for our partners. And I will turn it back over to Matt for BIL.
Thanks, Sean. So yeah, we'll toggle back to BIL for a few slides here. I'll do the next 3, and then I'll hand off to Beth Hughes Brown to get us through the last few slides. On this one, as Sean mentioned, the same is true for IRA as with BIL insofar as numbers are constantly changing as we load more and more projects, announce more and more projects. So this slide here is just a summary of what's been announced to date. It's about 537. Tomorrow it might be slightly higher than that. About 4.1 billion announced at the project level, and gradually those numbers, they work their way into our business system. The amounts on the projects get obligated, but in general, third bullet, since about the last update in March, a little more than $1 billion getting announced, and so the pace is starting to increase as we move through the BIL life cycle. Last bullet there, about 112 different projects across our more than a dozen program areas. And so we've got all these news releases listed on our BIL webpage. They're in an announcements table that's chronological, and you can go through and look for selections of interest to you or NOFOs, funding opportunities of interest to you. Next slide, please. The projects that we're funding to date, several of them are at or above the $1 billion mark. We've got dam safety, we've got water storage projects, and the biggest single project that we're funding anywhere right now, Navajo Gallup project, benefits Navajo Nation, Hickory, Apache, and City of Gallup. It's been decades, probably since the middle of the last century, since Reclamation had this much financial assistance and construction activity underway at one time. There's dozens of others besides those ones I just mentioned, as you saw on Sean's map, and we'll get to the BIL map in a second. On this slide here, I don't say those statistics as to brag. It's just to keep everyone aware that we need you to stay engaged with us, and we need applications from our local partners in order to get these projects funded. The core premise of the Bureau of Reclamation program is engagement with local sponsors. That's who we do the reclamation program with and for since the earliest days. It's meant for irrigation districts, tribes, communities, municipalities. That's who the reclamation program is for and with. So I say those statistics to keep people aware of, it's going to keep rolling out, and we need your applications to help fund worthy projects. On this screen right here, I probably should have spelled it out better, but that's more than $800 million of funding opportunities open right now on that screen. Probably more than 900 million. Just the last one, the last bullet, the aging infrastructure application period, that is to allocate $670 million for FY25. So there is a lot of money going out the door right now, and we need to continue the partnerships with you, the tribal community, with our water and power partners and everyone in order to put this money onto worthwhile projects. And you know, the reason on the next slide, if we could go to the next one, droughts are not going to go away. Obviously, droughts, in fact, will probably be getting worse. But what will make their impact less is the participation in the kinds of projects that you've seen funded through the BIL and the IRA. Will reduce the impact of droughts. It will improve communities' resilience. It will help the ecosystem and avoid, where we can, avoid water and power supply imbalances where there's conflict over finite supplies of water and power. So that's why we're doing this. And the funding opportunities that we're putting out are aimed at squarely at that objective. Also, you know, a lot of these funding opportunities are open for multiple rounds now. We didn't used to do that. We're doing that now, and it makes them, we think, a little bit easier for applicants to get in at a time that is right for them when they're ready to put in that application and or their project is ready. So be aware of that, and be aware of the fact that there's some gray area between some of these programs. There's a lot of similarity in an environmental water resources project sometimes and an aquatic ecosystem restoration project, for example. So be aware that these programs are sometimes implementing multiple authorities. That fourth bullet there, aquatic ecosystem projects can also be multi-benefits. Planning and design projects can have multiple benefits, and that terminology comes from the statute. So if you were around when these programs got authorized in the last few years, you recognize that terminology. If not, you will see what it's described as in the funding opportunities. But nature-based infrastructure, we're implementing those kinds of new authorities and policy guidance that we got from Congress in these funding opportunities with multiple cycles and multiple authorities getting blended into the same funding opportunity. We think it makes it easier for the applicants so that they don't have to do as much shopping. And we've got a lot more of these announcements coming in June and for the rest of calendar 2024. With that, I will hand back to Beth Hughes-Brown from our budget office and my BIL co-lead to walk us through the rest of the slides.
Thank you, Matt. So let me just do my little sermon first. We use the term getting money out the door. We know that getting money out the door means it's going to where it should be. And we are blessed and delighted to be participants in that. Where if you are one of the folks that has applied for and gotten funding for the purposes that the BIL and IRA were written for and were passed for, we are delighted to be able to help you with that, to get water to where it needs to be. And we are totally delighted. We use the shortcut of saying out the door, but we know what that means and we know how important it is. End of sermon. So how much is left? So if you think about 1.66 billion per year for each of 5 years, that's how much is appropriated. So if you think about a year and 4 quarters, we've just finished the second quarter of the third year. Thus, we are at midpoint of the BIL funding, right? So it is available until expended. So it doesn't mean that we'll be finished spending it at the end of those 5 years. We're at the midpoint of it being available for the purposes that it was intended. So you can see online, usbr.gov/BIL. You can see our spend plans. And so far, you've got the spend plan for 22, 23, 24. We've also published the ones for 25. They were based in the beginning and continue to be based on what our capability is in each of the 12 major program areas and sub-programs for 4 more. So that's what they were based on. As we've gone through the last couple of years, some money gets moved around, but again, based on capability. If we are capable of using it in one particular program and not in another, we will go ahead and use it in that particular fiscal year, staying within all of the requirements. There are ceilings for each of those program levels, ceilings for a particular year, how much we can't go past. And we obey all of those, but we've been using it as efficiently as we can, using it where we can. So some of those programs will finish earlier than others. But at any rate, what you see on that usbr.gov/BIL is where we are. It'll tell you what we spent it on as we roll it out the door. And so you're not yet seeing something obligated until it's signing on the dotted line and we have a contract in place and we've done everything we need to do. But you're seeing the progress of how that money is being allocated and to whom it's being allocated. So the spend plans are starting at the program level, and then we do an addendum which says, okay, here's your program level, and now we've allocated it down to the project level, which is when it gets exciting. Next slide, please. I said we're about halfway through. The addendum is going to tell you a lot. There was one that we just published. Ann Lewis Williams, who was on this call, worked with me. She did the draft of the addendum. It had a lot of information in it because it was that whole second quarter. It was January through April. And so it had a lot of information in there. There were 9 different programs that went from program to project level. A lot of information there. So please avail yourself if you haven't yet about what it says there. It'll keep you right up to date on what's going on now. So it shows everything when it goes down to that project level. Next slide, please. So there was a great big bunch. We're very proud of it. The phrase that we started was $1 billion April. Took a little longer, so it was $1 billion May. But we just got more than $1 billion in BIL alone. I think about $500 million in IRA around the same time. A prodigious amount of getting money to where it needs to be in the last month and a half. So recently we've had, and this is after that addendum, we've had aging infrastructure announced, $520 million. That's one that's kind of interesting because if we don't get the applications that are appropriate, legal, and satisfy all the criteria in a particular year, it's going to go to the next year. What we don't spend in this particular fiscal year. For example, we had over 600 million allocated in the spend plan for this year, but 520 million was how many people applied for and qualified for and ended up with the funding. Once we get that funding, we have to go through several other steps, but 520 million was allocated recently on 5/16 from that. And as Matt talked about, we are also starting to look ahead to the next fiscal year, but we'll talk about that in just a second. So then there's storage and conveyance, a large amount of money, and it's we're accustomed to the WIN program, which is the WIN Act, which is Water Infrastructure Innovations for the Nation. WIN. We're accustomed to that, and that's where most of those storage projects started. We also have at least one very large conveyance project, which is also authorized under BIL, and the one that we're putting a lot of our energy into and funding, of course, is AVC, Arkansas Valley Conduit, which is a very large project that was authorized back in the 60s. And finally is coming to fruition as a result of the BIL. We're delighted about that. Large scale water recycling projects, 180 million was just authorized and allocated on 5/28. And desal, recycling, QWMP, Cooperative Watershed Management Program, rural water also are coming up very soon. And all of those are on usbr.bil. So I mentioned, and I think Matt alluded to it as well, that we're starting to try to allocate things into the future, be prepared into the future. We don't have the funding yet for fiscal 25 because fiscal 25 hasn't arrived yet. As of midnight on September 30th, that money will have been appropriated to us and we can start spending fiscal 25 dollars. We want to be prepared to do so. So we are a couple of the programs that we've been working on before on a year by year based on capability basis. We're now projecting into the future. Aging infrastructure is one such program, very large program. We've already started the process. It's a multi-month process to get from please apply, let's cast the net widely, to starting to analyze them based on whether they are legally capable of being considered under the aging infrastructure account, and then the dollars will be allocated. We're hoping we can allocate them midnight 01 on 10/1. In other words, when we get the appropriation, or very soon thereafter. Allocating is not the end of the story, of course, especially with something like aging infrastructure. There's lots more. We're going to talk more about that in just a second. Next slide, please. Where are the BIL projects? Well, oh, by the way, I try not to say BIL because it sounds too much like BIL. BIL. Where are the BIL projects? If you remember our drought map that you've seen many times before, if you've been participant in these briefings, this kind of looks like that. Where we have the drought is where the projects are most likely to end up. So you see the places where there's been ongoing life-altering drought over the past decade or so. And so that's where most of those projects end up. However, you see a lot of them in areas where we couldn't afford to do things before. They would be a lower priority because they satisfied fewer people, for example. Now we are able to do that as a result of the blessing that is BIL and IRA. We are able to do that. So we're obviously thrilled to be part of that. So next slide, please. Obligated. Okay, obligated is a funny word. A lot of people have question marks about what does that mean. It is a legal term. So it means when the government has obligated something, it means the government's on the hook for that money. Can't turn back. It's a legal requirement. So there are many steps between announcing a project and saying, here's the project that's going to get some money. There's lots of steps that have to happen between then and now. And let me just tell you a little bit about that. Little list right here. So it has to comply. It has to do the fair and competitive application process. It has to satisfy certain criteria and all of those things that go into making it one of the ones that is selected. But then after that, they have to be further screened for making sure that they obey CFR 2, right? It's 2 CFR 1402. I mean, there are actually requirements of how you create a financial assistance agreement or a contract from an announcement of a project. There's a lot of hoops that have to be gone through. We have to comply with competitive grant programs. We have to extend that. We have to support the collaboration and do better outcomes and project benefits and many, many things that have to happen to comply with best government and comply with the requirements of law to get it right. Now, that sounds a little bit like, too much red tape. It's not at all. If you're the taxpayer and you're saying, this is my money that's being used, you want to make sure it's being used right. You want to make sure it's being used legally. You want to make sure that you have done everything you need to do to make sure that this is a bona fide process, a bona fide expense of a particular taxpayer dollar. Next slide, please. Okay, so we're talking about what we have a couple different titles here. We have obligations, we have committed, we have selected, and we have expended. I just described obligated. When you sign that contract, something is obligated. Committed means you've put the money aside for that contract, so it's before obligations. You're setting the money aside and saying, I expect to use this for this contract. Don't touch it. It's reserved. Before that is selected. We've talked about selected. When we make those announcements, we are talking about what projects have been selected. So it's selected, then committed, then obligated. Last one in the row is expended. So if you have a contract, you've signed the contract, everybody signed the contract, everybody's on board. You haven't sent the check though. As soon as you send the check for what it is that that contract is for, that's called an expenditure. So that's the check out the door is the expenditure. So there's 4 different stages there. All of them are part of the normal selection, the normal process of federal government expenditures. Recipients and agencies need time to negotiate agreements. So aging infrastructure is the principal requirement for that. It's a new program, as you know, but everybody who gets money, most people who get money under that have to negotiate a repayment agreement because that's the requirement of the aging infrastructure account. You have to repay it. You have to repay it with interest. So there's some foot dragging and there's some negotiation and there's some making sure that all the partners that are working with that particular person who's going to sign on the side, dotted line agree to it. So there's lots that goes into negotiating those agreements. They aren't just a slam dunk. Sometimes they can take a matter of months. And then it's important to understand the context in terms of that process. We just want to make sure folks are aware of that because it's not just a here's your money, go ahead, do good. Next slide, please. Delighted to be able to turn this back over to Matt Monsieri, my partner.
Thanks, Beth. So yep, last slide, just final comments, and then I'll hand back to Mary Carlson. Thank you again for being part of today. Our Director of Communications, Rob Manning, likes to say, when you have a good team, take a picture. So he takes a lot of pictures. But what's good about that comment that he makes is he's mindful of the uniqueness of the moment. And similarly, we're in a pretty unique moment on the history of Western water right now with these investments. So please keep being part of that moment. Keep applying. If you haven't applied, please look at whether to do so and keep helping us move BIL and IRA forward to help us get to the more secure water future that these investments are trying to get to for our country. That's it. Thanks for your time today. I'll hand back to Mary and we'll try to answer any questions.
Thank you all. As you can see, we are extremely proud of what we've been able to accomplish so far through Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and Inflation Reduction Act. Together, we are prioritizing water reliability and resilience to drought in the West. So at this time, we're ready for questions. I will ask that you please use the little hand icon at the top of your screen to raise your hand if you have a question. And then we can call on you to unmute, hopefully, and get your question. So let's take a look and see if anybody has any questions. Not seeing any hands so far. Let me just check the chat and see if anybody's put any questions in the chat. So far, nothing. Are you all seeing anything? Okay, well, I'll give you just a minute, just in case you're trying to get to that hand raise, but we do, of course, always allow questions at usbr.bil@usbr.gov or at usbr.ir.act@usbr.gov for Inflation Reduction Act. So you're always welcome to submit questions there. We check those regularly and we'll be glad to put you in touch with the person who can help you out if you need anything. Just one final check. Any questions?
May I add a note, Mary?
Absolutely.
I would love to ask the group. You don't have to do it here, but if you would like more of something, less of something, or you want to provide comments on these briefings, please do. Do you want to use the what email would you like to use for that, Mary?
We can use the same emails as listed in the chat, the usbr.bil or the usbr.ir.act. You can submit any comments on those as well if you'd like more information on something or however you'd like us to tailor these. We can certainly do that. I think that about concludes our presentation. Thank you to all of our presenters today. We appreciate all the information you all gather up to share with everyone. Again, we are dedicated to transparently implementing bipartisan infrastructure law and Inflation Reduction Act. And please feel free to go to our web pages if they are posted in the chat. If you have any anything you want to look at there, or submit your questions, and we'll be glad to answer them. And we'll see you soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.